love this place!
Well, artwork for the core rulebooks of the next edition of D&D has been released over the last few weeks. Tyler Jacobson is the artist for both the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. That name should sound familiar. And as of the recording of this video, it has not yet been announced who the artist was for the Monster Manual. We're just going by a story on IGN, and they declined to name the artist, or they didn't know. Generally speaking, I did not really care for the Player's Handbook cover at all from Tyler. I like the DM's Guide cover a little bit more. And I really kind of dislike the Monster Manual cover for some unexplainable bits of laziness, which we'll go into in just a little bit. Oddly enough, all of these pieces had issues that are harbingers of problems that Wizards of the Coast is suffering as a whole these days. So these are the 5 things the core artwork is telling me about the company that owns D&D. It seems that there is no desire to innovate or take risks from modern Wizards of the Coast. Now, in the early days of D&D, TSR rotated cover artists for their flagship products a little bit. What we got was an amazing diversity of talent exposed to the world. It probably would have been very easy for TSR to choose Earl Otis to do a piece for the 1983 reprint of the basic and expert sets, especially considering his seminal work in the, I believe, 1981 box set. But they took a chance, and what we got was a magnificent piece from the legendary Larry Elmore, which defined D&D for a new generation of kids. Dave Trampier did one of the most recognizable works in the history of RPGs with his original Advanced D&D Player's Handbook. David Sutherland III did the equally fantastic original DM's Guide cover. Yet TSR took a risk, and in their Orange Spine reprints of those books, they used the great Jeff Easley. In 3rd edition D&D, early Wizards of the Coast made the bold decision to jettison traditional fantasy cover art and release the books as mysterious tombs of knowledge. Even if you didn't like it, you kind of had to admire the moxie. But modern Wizards of the Coast decided to use the talented artist, Tyler Jacobson, for both the 5th edition core rulebook covers in 2014, as well as at least 2 of the new 1D&D covers. It's resulted in a very similar aesthetic, kind of stale almost, a little bit tired. Granted, the artwork isn't necessarily up my alley to begin with, but Wizards of the Coast is certainly making it clear that nothing of note is changing in this new edition, right down to the artwork, which gives each edition its feel, sort of. It kind of makes you wonder why you even need to buy these new books at all. The original 5th edition Monster Manual featured a beholder on the cover, while the 1D&D Monster Manual features a beholder on the cover. I mean, come on, guys. This is reeking of pure laziness. Now, we all know that Wizards of the Coast is terrified of a 4th edition situation where they try to change things too much and fall flat on their face. But they seem to now be going the direction of Games Workshop, where you'll probably buy new rule books every 4 or 5 years for essentially the same game. A +1 bonus here, a new feat there, a new race to appeal to the furries, a new superfluous class to catch the eye of power gamers who refuse to let their characters die. I mean, it'll essentially be the same experience you've already got in your hands. And it's a nice, safe cash grab for a Fortune 500 company. But remember, this stuff only works if you cooperate with it. Another thing this artwork tells us about Wizards of the Coast in general is the sheer pandering that they do. Because so little is changing in this new edition of D&D, Wizards of the Coast has to rely on everything they can to hawk these, what are going to be overpriced paperweights. That includes a heaping basket of member berries to sucker in the old grognards like me. Hey, remember Venger? Everyone loves Venger. Why look, it's Warduke. You kids may think he's just another evil guy, but that's Warduke. There's also this chick, and this guy too. They tell me they're crucial. Trust me, I was around back then. Nobody talked about how cool Venger was in the cartoon. The cartoon, as an aside, was a bit of a disappointment, even to 13-year-old Double D. Nobody ever died, and there was too much comic relief, and quite frankly, most of the characters were annoying. Plus, everyone knew back then that the real D&D cartoon was Thundar the Barbarian. But I digress. These are just cheap callbacks with no substance. It's Wizards of the Coast screaming, "See, we care." As they take a dump on the old heroes they should be celebrating.
There are materials in original Dungeons & Dragons that would never pass our inclusivity reviews today.
We've seen what they do with the actual properties they can exploit in Spelljammer and Planescape. Both of them got much ballyhooed re-releases for 5th edition, and both went quietly into the night because they really weren't supported at all. Again, just another cheap cash grab by a cynical company that's running out of ideas and has no appreciable creative talent left in the cupboards. These covers also show a blatant worship of DEI at Wizards of the Coast. I mean, it's clear that Wizards either doesn't understand or refuses to acknowledge who their core audience is. Let me do them a solid. Their audience is overwhelmingly white, mostly men. Yet the executive producer of D&D says that white guys like him can't leave the hobby fast enough. Funny how he still has a job, isn't it? They hire untalented, narcissistic diversity consultant hacks. Those people scrutinize every line written and every piece of art submitted and run it through their patented creativity remover. The least common denominator is now gatekeeping what you read and what you see in these books. So what you get is hilariously awful products like Strixhaven and Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, and curious artwork choices like the ones in the new Player's Handbook. You can kind of see the evolution of Tyler Jacobson's thought process on the Player's Handbook, from what might have been a cool homage to Jeff Easley's Wizard in his original sketch, to perhaps, after a talking to by a diversity consultant, a sister delivering the sass and the spells. Oh, and in case you didn't get the point that Wizards of the Coast hates its core audience of aging white men, well, they put a spare on there too. They did throw a ginger woman on there. In modern-day Wizards of the Coast, that's probably considered a concession. Even the lone visible white guy is just a dwarf. Come to think of it, don't dwarven women have beards too? And the Monster Manual features yet another black female spellcaster. Wizards of the Coast is obsessed with black women. They fetishize them in a bizarre way. This even though they make up an infinitesimally small part of the player base. It's fine, of course, to have a little color in the book, so to speak, but it's just so odd once you notice it. Especially when, due to the lack of actual black female players, it'd be up to mostly white women and men to play these characters. That, of course, would be a big cultural appropriation no-no. So these characters really are out there as nothing but empty diversity trophies. Instead of acknowledging that there are some things that some people just aren't interested in, they doggedly try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Sorry, Wizards, you should have tried that Red Lobster tie-in years ago, but it's too late now. These covers reveal a lack of attention to detail that is endemic at Wizards of the Coast in general right now, I think. At the end of 2023, Wizards was to have released the Book of Many Things, which included a deck of many things that you could use in your campaign. Unfortunately, there were issues with the deck not being cut correctly, one of the most basic things. Now, most of these things can be headed off with the samples that the manufacturer sends you. This is not a one-man band doing their first-time Kickstarter. This is Hasbro. And while I'm not really sure what happened here, it seems to me another instance of Wizards of the Coast not paying attention to the details. I understand that artwork doesn't always have to make sense anatomically, as long as the style is kind of cool. Hell, Rob Liefeld wouldn't have a career if that weren't the case. Still, on flagship releases like the D&D Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide, I would not expect to find some of these oddities. That dragon arm, for instance. Apparently this dragon accidentally drank a potion of thalidomide. And where's that other arm coming from? Is it just me, or would it have to be impossibly long? It's a nitpick for sure, but the left arm in the pose of this warrior just seems a little bit off. And where in heaven's name is Warduke's leg? Shouldn't it be bracing him somewhere down there? On the Monster Manual cover, the two protagonists aren't even addressing the threat that is hovering over them, a giant beholder. They appear to be purposefully looking away from it. Not only that, as pointed out by Patty from Patty's Parlor, the anti-magic cone of the beholder's central eye is apparently defective, as the wizard seems to be bringing off some sort of a spell. And look, Tyler Jacobson is a good artist, but his work on the Player's Handbook is not, in my opinion, his best work. The composition is just weird. The focus is on the gold dragon, who is about to do the job the PCs are supposed to be doing, namely killing the bad guy. And as cool as the gold dragon head is to me, it's all just not that heroic. By the way, you do see the bad guy, right? He's hiding down there behind the word mark. Again, an odd choice. The devil is in the details, and I'm afraid both the artist and the company rolled a 1 here. In the end, as a whole, these pieces are just not that inspiring to me. I like the composition of the DM's guide, and those skeletons are kind of cool. But the blatant pandering with the villain choices sort of takes you out of the moment, so to speak. Instead of wondering who an unnamed necromancer is and who his henchman might be, your mind kind of says, oh, that's the cartoon guy. And I think I had an action figure of that one a long time ago. It's a pastiche in a sort of way. No imagination necessary. Wizards will do that for you. The colors on the Player's Handbook seem to be a mishmash of everything, leading to no real unified point of view. While there's a little bit more color focus on the DM's Guide cover, he still kind of shoots himself in the foot with this annoying bit of bisexual lighting. Something that's just going to date the piece to this weird time where a bunch of weirdos think that pink and baby blue colors will strike a blow against the patriarchy or something. It'd be hard to think that its inclusion is just a coincidence, given what Wizards of the Coast has become lately. In the end, these just don't pass the cool test to me. It's just not that memorable. Nothing grabs you. And the stuff that might grab you is very derivative. It's art run through a corporate filter. Nothing tells you its shortcomings and who it was made for more than Fat Matt Colville going over the top praising the Player's Handbook art. Yet he had to do so while taking a pot shot at older D&D art. The message is clear. Anything new is good, especially when there's a black female in it. Anything old is bad, especially when it features a white guy. Well, there we have it. Will the artwork make you more or less inspired to buy the new edition of D&D? Or is it a non-factor? What do you personally think of these covers? Am I right that they're symptoms of what's wrong at Wizards of the Coast? Let me know in the comments below, would you? I do try to read them all if I can, and I love hearing from you. Yes, even the ones I don't agree with. All right, you guys take care and have a great, great rest of your day.